All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode in Women Who Code Cybersecurity series. Today we have with us Vandana Verma, who's a very well-known name in the security community in the Asia as well as all over the world. So I've been following her since a long time, and I'm so glad that she's with us today, discussing about DevSecOps, which is something very important and super fun topic to work on. So the topic is going to be DevSecOps Fundamentals Workshop, and she's going to share her insights on how to get started in DevSecOps. And of course, she's going to explain more onto that. Just to give a brief introduction about Women Who Code, we are not non-profit organization whose main goal is to support more women to get into the STEM related fields, and not just get them into the field, but also make them women leaders like Vandana as well. So who's also a well-known leader in the security side. So that's the plan. So, and this episode is especially catered towards, this series is especially catered towards cybersecurity, because we do realize that there's a huge gap when it comes to the gender gap in the industry, right? And this is a humble effort to make sure that we bring in more women and share their insights, and we can inspire more folks to join the industry. And currently we have more than 320,000 members and growing, of course, in 147 countries. So if you're someone from different country, I'm sure you will have your country chapter as well, but you're free to feel free to join our chapters as well. So that's about Women of Code. And again, coming to the initiatives, we have this is about cybersecurity series, right? Every once in 2 weeks or something, we kind of have this kind of a talk with leaders in cybersecurity, or also someone who has been like a practical, who has done a lot of hands-on in cybersecurity, right? Be it workshops or their insights. We're going to do those series. Along with that, we have interview ready series as well, and a regular Python study group, because, well, we all need Python, irrespective of whichever field it is. And there's, of course, the data analytics, generative AI, and a lot of new chapters are opening up. So please do have a look at all these things, and do follow us on our social handles, Twitter, Instagram. This is the QR code. And if you just search Women Who Code Singapore, you will definitely find us. If not, please reach out to me, and I'll make sure that you'll be connected to the right chapters. And coming to today's speaker, again, Vandana Verma, like there's so much to speak about her. It's very tough to summarize into small statements. I've been seeing her since like quite number of years. When I started my career as well, like she was heading the B-sides in India. So she's still doing that. She's part of the OAS Global Board of Directors, which is the main framework of cybersecurity. We all have heard OAS Top 10, right? So also she's a member of the Black Hat Asia Review Board. I'm sure those in cybersecurity would have known that we just concluded the Black Hat, I think US, and I'm sure Vandana was there again. So along with that, she has founded a lot of diversity initiatives like InfoSec Girls, WOSEC, and even InfoSec Kids, which is very inspiring, right? So again, her expertise, of course, into application security and product security, and she's been a keynote speaker for many years, a very well-known speaker as well, and awards, though I'm sure she's got a lot of accolades since the day I've been seeing her profile on LinkedIn. So I'm so glad that she has joined us today on a very historic day, especially in India when we have a Chandrayaan going on. She has taken her time to speak about a very interesting topic, and I hope both the talk as well as Chandrayaan goes successful. So over to you, Vandana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very kind of you to say. Like there were a lot of things you said. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope the session would be helpful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video because sometimes the latency is there. If it's okay.
Absolutely.
I've seen that
The
sometimes
content
when
is
I'm
more
speaking,
important.
even the Wi-Fi is good. Yeah,
No
so I'm just
problem.
going to stop my screen video. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so let me share my screen and I hope you are able to see it.
Yes.
So today, when I talk about DevSecOps fundamentals, I am going to share a perspective because so I'm going to share a perspective about safe dependencies. Because when we say DevSecOps is a very wide terminology where we talk about CI/CD pipeline, we talk about continuous integration to writing code, to pushing it to production, and so many more things. Even now, when we talk about cloud, that also comes as part of DevSecOps fundamentals. I'm not going to talk about myself at all here. I'll just straight away go to the agenda. So as part of this workshop, what we generally do, if it's more than 2 hours, we do these four things. We talk about developer security, we talk about security fixes with Sneak, and we talk about live bug bash. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a few things here where I will show you more demos rather than make you do, because we can have a proper workshop where you also will follow along with me for 2.5 hours, maybe in the next session. So for today, we would be covering developer security and some demos around the issues that are there in the industry. So the first section, which I talked about, developer security, that will cover safe dependencies, secure code, security below the surface, or exactly what we are envisioning our applications to be, and defense in depth, that what do we really need to make sure that our apps are secure. So when we say safe dependency, the most important thing comes into our mind is that why do we want to do it? There are 7 things that we want. First, we want to protect our sensitive information, which is our user data, our content around our intellectual property. And at the same time, we want to ensure that we have proper regulatory compliance. And at the same time, when we see these breaches happening, we want to reduce the cost of it, because it should not impact us in any way, or it, even if it's impacting it, it has the slightest of the impact that is there. And then there's intellectual property, we want business continuity. All of this would just lead to building trust with the customers, because if there is no trust, like, then there is a big problem with the customers, and we need to address the growing threat landscape. Now, while I talk about threat landscape, it is again increasing. Now we are talking about supply chain attacks. Now, why do I concentrate here on supply chain? Because this is one thing which is actually happening big time, which is actually creating a lot of issues. When we say DevSecOps, we do coding, we have these libraries, containers, we are pushing it to Git, and then at the same time, we are making it as part of the CI/CD pipeline. We are storing it, we are making it a software, and we are shipping it to the consumers. But is it just simple? Is it just that simple? Are there no issues in that? Are we able to do it easily? No, we are not. And that's where the problem lies, where we need to concentrate on a lot of aspects. Now, what are these aspects? Let's talk about them. Visual Studio Code. Now, there was a big attack which happened on Visual Studio Code. What happened is that there were older plugins, or there were outdated plugins which were part of Visual Studio Code, and the attacker was able to get access to multiple accounts of GitHub using the Visual Studio Code. The person reported it genuinely with Microsoft, but if it wouldn't have been the case, what would have happened? Think of that scenario. Maybe your account, my account, or any other account would have gone to the attacker's inbox, or the data would have been stolen. Now, it just not stopped there. Think of dependency confusion. While we are playing around with our code, we actually embed our code with the third-party dependencies. And that's where comes the confusion. Now, dependency confusion is a new type of supply chain attack, which actually exploits the naming convention. For example, I work for Sneak, so it's a SNYK. If you mistype it SYNK, and that has happened in the past, even at a conference, somebody mentioned the company name is SYNK. So that is different. And similarly, my name has a lot of A and N in it. And a lot of my friends here write an H in it. So Vandhana, which is common. Now, here I stay, and most of my friends call me Vandana. But then, if there is an attacker who's keeping an eye on such things, have created this kind of attack, which is called typo squatting, where which is like a practice of creating packages with names that are similar to the legitimate ones, with the intention of tricking users. So it'll be a big problem. And then on top of it, now we want our containers to be secure. But then, are they secure? There have been cases where the containers are vulnerable from the get-go itself. When we are downloading it, they are vulnerable from there itself. And that's where we need to concentrate on much bigger picture. And then the SolarWinds attack. And so if I talk about SolarWinds, this attack was very highly sophisticated supply chain attack. It involved the compromisation of SolarWinds Orion software, where malicious actors infiltrated SolarWinds software development process and injected a small backdoor into it. Now, when they did it, they impacted huge amount of organization. If I have to give the tentative number, then the software was distributed to over 18,000 organizations, including US government agencies, Fortune 500 companies, and much more. Attackers were able to maintain the persistent access into those systems, and at the same time, they were able to escalate privileges, steal sensitive information, and whatnot. And that's where important thing comes, where if somebody has access to everything that you have, it'll be like a party to them. I would enjoy if I have access to all your environment. Now, then Code Cove happened. So Code Cove happened in 2021, April. So what is Code Cove? Code Cove is a software company that provides a code coverage tool, which is used by thousands of organizations globally. So attackers were able to gain access to Code Cove Bash uploader script, which is used to upload code coverage reports to the platform. Now, the script was tampered and it allowed attackers to steal credentials, sensitive information, access sensitive information, and whatnot. Even if I talk about which all organizations were impacted, from Atlassian to IBM to Procter and Gamble to many companies were impacted. Now, I'm not making it up. This data is available online. And these things don't stop here. Then comes important thing is, what is the problem? It is complex. Then there's an implicit trust which is there, we should not have, and then the weakness links which is there. So we are talking about it, we know it, but are we fixing it? Now let's go back a little a few years back. So this breach, which is like an Equifax breach, we call it as. So this attack on Equifax began in 2017. Let me show you the complete history of it. So this attack actually started in May, but then the whole thing started in February. Apache said that there is a big issue in the struts framework and on this particular version 2.3, 2.2 or 2.3. Then they released a fix. As soon as the fix was released that now we should fix the vulnerability, the very next day exploit was available on exploit. Attackers started exploiting because they want to understand what can be the impact, which organization they can target. So when the exploit is available, they started targeting companies. And that's where Equifax became part of it. But you never know how many other companies were part of it. But it came into the limelight. It's like, if you're caught, you're a thief. If you're not, you can enjoy. And that's where the problem lies. That this is not just to do with Equifax. They have come back super strong from that. Now, if you talk about the security team, they've set up amazingly the way they are doing it. But then it also teaches us some certain lessons that we need to understand what we have in our environment. But trust me, this issue gave us sleepless nights where we were trying to understand which applications of ours is vulnerable to this vulnerability. But did we learn any lesson? Now, talk about this. I'm sure most of you have heard about Log4j, or let me explain what was it. So Log4j Jindy attack, also known as Log4 shell, was a critical vulnerability which was discovered in Apache Log4j logging framework in December 2021. So December 2021, I was on leave for 2.5 weeks. I was like, now I can enjoy. I went to Delhi and was enjoying with my cousins. There was some weddings and everything. Because after COVID, everything was opening and we were enjoying. But suddenly, everyone on Twitter, LinkedIn, Slack, WhatsApp groups, everywhere, this was the talk of the town. But what was this vulnerability? So the vulnerability was related to the way Log4j, which is a logging framework, handled Java naming and directory interface, which is called Jindy. So it used to do lookups. And it's a feature for accessing remote resources where you want to call something from the different server. So what attackers did was attackers were able to craft Jindy request, which contained the reference to the remote server. So they sent a request to the server and server called attacker server. And everything was coming from that. Now I'm going to show you a demo because you wouldn't. So till the time I don't look at a demo, I don't understand what it is because it had a very wide ranging impact. So what I'm going to do is, before going to this security below the surface. Let me go ahead and actually show you a demo. Okay, let me clear it. And okay, I hope you can see my screen fine. So on my desktop, I have different goofs. Goofs are nothing but vulnerable web apps. And I believe in demos, or I believe in then hands-on, then only I understand. Now, mind it, my system is not vulnerable. I'm doing everything in certain folders. And if there is some like it is some vulnerability or something or a malware which has an impact, I don't do it on my system. I have a virtual box and a VM player. I run it in my lab so that I can play around with it. Here, I have multiple goofs. One of them is Log4Shell goof. Log4Shell goof is vulnerable app. And here, I have two things, mainly Log4Shell client and Log4Shell server. Because without server running, how can I client would be able to connect to the server? Like you and I are speaking, I'm a client and you have to give me the data. So first you have to run some software, then only I'll be able to talk to you, or you wouldn't be. So here I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to go to my Log4Shell server and I'm going to turn it on. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this vulnerable Java version, which was part of Log4Shell. Here, I'm using this JDK 11, which I know is vulnerable version, and I'm going to be executing Maven to use it. And let's see what it does. See, demo gods sometimes don't shower their blessings. Okay, it is working. Perfect. Oh, that's amazing. So here, there are two things which are running. There's an HTTP server, which is running on port 8000. There is an LDAP server, which is running on port 9999. So this means that my Jindy server is ready. My my server is ready. Now I need client to be connecting with it. So I'm going to use a new window, not a tab. And I am going to go ahead and put it here. So here this time, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to my Java goof, Log4Shell goof, and Log4Shell client this time. And here I have certain files. Now what I need to do is I need to connect. Let me do one thing first. Sometimes temp. Okay. Okay. So my client is ready. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect it with the vulnerable server. So here, let's see this. Okay. Here, I'm going to use the same JDK version. I'm going to connect it to the server and see what happens. Now, as soon as it starts connecting, you will see that there is a request coming. And as soon as the request starts coming, there is an evil server which is ready on the local host port 8000, and it has an LDAP running as well. So what happened here? It started connecting. Now, when it started connecting, this file was not there. This temp pond. Pond is where we hack some application. So we said we have pawned this application. So after connecting to this evil server, Jindy server, now this file exists and you can see the request response here. Okay, let's see if this file exists here. Right. Okay. If you see, today is August 23rd. I'm in India. Right now, the time is 4:51 or 4:52. It's just now. So you can see that this file exists. Now, rm minus rf. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this file. And I'll see if this exists now. If you see, this file has been deleted. Now we're going to again connect to this vulnerable server and see what happens. If you see, there's a request which is coming here and then the response comes here. So this file would now exist. And if you see, the timestamp has changed. The interesting bit is it's just a simple file. But think of a situation, you are actually connecting to XYZ server, for example, Sneak, or you are connecting to ovast.org, or you're connecting to World Women Who Code application. And suddenly there is a malware on your system, which has been downloaded. How scary that would be. And this is where the problem is, that we need to update this ecosystem. Now, to understand that, we need to first understand what is our application made up of. Very important when we start about DevSecOps, or when we talk about the application. Here, if you see, this is an iceberg. So when we say iceberg, the tip of the iceberg refers to the visible portion, which is written by the developers. So this layer represents the software code that is written by any developer to create an application. And now, if you look at this code on the screen, what do you see? What is the problem? Can any one of you tell me what can be the problem here in this code? Think of it. Can anyone guess? Okay, I'll explain here. Here, we are not sanitizing the user input. How? Here there is a function which has which is taking a request response, and there's a next callback feature. It's trying to call the user table or a collection, which means there is a database behind the scene. It's trying to log in, looking for username and a password. So what are the vulnerabilities here? What can be the vulnerability? It could be a database injection, a NoSQL injection, or a SQL injection. So what happens in Express framework? Because I know that it's an JavaScript framework. So what happens is that apps which are built with Express will have a body parser to parse the JSON object. So this information will go on the JSON object, and it takes whatever you sent it and convert it to a JavaScript object. So if you have a request which has a username and a password, it's going to be contained as a JavaScript object. But if you convert it to a username which is an admin, and you're not putting any password, so object, if it's not sanitized properly, might convert into an object to perform a NoSQL injection by using this piece of code. This actually shows the importance of sanitization, because it's just taking the username and password and I just putting it. And that's where the problem lies. And I used to think this is my app, but no, my app is this. My code written and then the open source. So open source code, as per one of the research, 80 to 90% of the code on the internet is open source. And this is the layer which lies just beneath the surface of the waterline, which has open source libraries, which I showed you that Log4j was open source component, Apache logging framework, that dependency was an open source component, and it's a very critical component of the software development process, because it enables developers to quickly and efficiently build applications using the pre-existing code. So I truly love it because my application is completely built using the open source component. But also, there is another layer which is added to our app. So this container layer is part of, or you can say it has container images, which are used to deploy and run applications. So containerization is again a popular method of application development due to its portability and scalability. But then it comes with its own set of security challenges, which contain vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that can be exploited by the attackers. And then comes IAC. So this another layer. So our code, third-party code, and then the containers, and then IAC. IAC is nothing but infrastructure as code, which has configuration files, scripts, which are used to automate the deployment and management of the underlying infrastructure. So here, this includes things like servers, networks, and other resources. Now, IAC again comes with its own set of challenges which we need to address, and that's where the modern architecture comes, or these issues will keep happening, where a PlayStation network account hacked because of a vulnerable file or a misconfiguration. And similarly, there were other issues that arise. Now, these are some of the use cases that are there, but then there are many. So when we talk about our modern architecture or DevSecOps, we need to consider these four things specifically: app code, open source code, containers, IAC, all of this. And then remember, anything that we are coding has to go to cloud at some point. So code to cloud, we need to understand security has to be done at each step. It has to be as part of code, merge, CI/CD, deployment, cloud, and back to the code. where if we see any issues. So how it can happen when we talk about security left or shifting left, and this can be perceived as giving more work to the developer within an organization. Instead, it's about instilling or putting security as a mentality in everyone's life, and then part of the development life cycle to ensure that we have security culture. Now, all of this is okay. I'm sure you must have seen, especially with this one. Yes, this is like a feedback loop that we take input from the developers, testers, and security. But here, what we're trying to do is we are empowering developers to build applications securely within the entire development process. And shifting left becomes the virtuous feedback loop, where each iteration of a code or sprint that we deliver becomes more secure, where we start automating. And now, let me share some gyan. This is defense in depth. That what should we do? Open source software. There are multiple things that we can do. So for open source software security, you want to make sure that you keep an inventory of the components that you depend on. Like what we do is when we're writing the code, we download anything from the internet and we forget about it. We don't even remember what we downloaded. And at the same time, we need to leverage security tools which can tell us the security posture. If we don't, we are in trouble. We need to know what we have in our house. For example, in my house, there are 4 doors and 4 windows. And there is a window in attic, which I don't open, which I don't know much about, so I don't touch it. But when I go out, I close the 4 windows and 4 doors. But there is an attacker who comes in from that particular place. How crazy that would be. But how would you know it? And that's where we need to embrace automation. It is so important that it's one thing to do scans manually, but what if we had something which can be automatically alerting us about the issues it finds? And then we have security policies, including including action plans, which can help a lot with the open source security posture. Another important aspect is creating a list of what we have, and that's called SBOMs, software bill of material. It's nothing but a database which has packages, content, and license data. Now, my favorite part is container security. Now, here, this is all which is there, where don't run as root. Very little is needed these days to do it. Anyways, so why do we need to run a container as a root? And why do we need privileged containers? There's a whole class of containers which we don't actually need it. Similarly, drop capabilities, get rid of access permission. Why do you need it? Now, I'll tell you another story of my experience where one of the person from network team, so this person was actually managing firewalls, rules, and taking care of who can access what. And suddenly, this person moved from network team to security team. Now, here, the person is only supposed to monitor the rules, not manage it, not modify it. So as soon as this person moved, the permission also moved with him. So we were testing one of the apps, and we were just saying that we need to open a change request, we need to get this done, we need to get that done. This person said, "Wait, what I can do is I can actually make this change and come back." This person went to the system, made the changes, and came back and said, "Now try and access." We were able to access the application, and that's where the scary part comes. This person who is in a different team moves to my team and suddenly have all the access that this person should not have. And that's where we need to remove these accesses. And infrastructure as a code actually talks about that, where secrets are important. They're super important in this space. We want to make sure that we're using this responsibly and only give access to them which actually need it. So if you're running a test suite for an integration test, use a script that makes use of it, so that you don't need to actually know it, because it's encrypted on the build system. Then comes role-based access control, which is very important. So as soon as someone moves from one team to another, their role should be discarded. Their access should be discarded completely. So security context help in that. This is something that can be enforced at the runtime to further lock things down. And network policies are very important when we talk about security. A lot of systems these days, surprisingly, do not follow this approach, but it's very important that we implement rules for only the bare minimum of what is needed on the network, which is a must to keep the layer within the application secure. And then comes OPAs. Like, I love OPAs because OPA is nothing but open policy agent. Tools like Gatekeeper and Kyverno are policy engines, which are designed for Kubernetes to enforce the policies. Now, generally, I showcase this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you a demo of the vulnerability. So let me open my Visual Studio Code and show you something. So Visual Studio Code, let me actually, or why do I show it? Let me go ahead and sneak chat. Okay, wait. I'll ping you an app and let's see if you are able to have, you're having access to it. Okay, so here it's a chatting app. So when I open it, it asks me for a username. So I'll put my username as Vandana and start chatting. And I can see that, oh, there are people already created some rooms. So I'll say main room and I'm going to chat and I'm going to start chatting with you. You can also try this app. Here, as soon as I see an input field, what I want to do is I want to play around with it. So I'll say, hi, hi, women who code. Okay. I'll send message. So now the message comes. But mine is a hacker brain. I want to try different things and I want to know what kind of application it could be. So I'll say, hi, women who code. Okay, and hit enter and see what happens. If you see, instead of normal, now it's in italics. And here, I know that it could be marked down, and that's where my brain goes. I will say, hi, women who code. I'll try to make it bold and see if it happens. Now, it happens. Interestingly, this is happening, which means it could be running markdown. So if it's running markdown, I can try more things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say markdown guide. So this is my markdown guide because my application is running on markdown. So I had a bit of idea. But here, what I want to do is I want to create some links. So this is my favorite part. And now I'm going to use the links. Here, I'm going to use this particular syntax and I'm going to create my request. So I will say, test script, and I would have this tags script alert 1 and script tag close. Okay, and see what happens. Now, if you see, it didn't work. Nothing happened. It just came as it is, and there was an error. So now I am a persistent person. I want to keep trying. I want to know if there is any vulnerability that can be exploited, which can be played around. So I want to try more. I want to try different aspects of it. So let's see what can be done here, or if there is anything that I can do here. So I will go ahead and say path script, and I will, instead of these tags, I will say JavaScript colon alert 1. And let's see if something happens. Nothing happened, but I don't see it's really interesting. I must leave. Thank you. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try different things here. And here it does not say anything, which means there must be something which might be happening in the backend. So let's see if I can change something. Now, alert 1 is not working, but there could be maybe there is browser who must be stopping it. So I might want to use a converter or an encoder which might encrypt my script and browser accepts it. So I use this free formatter, which helps me in understanding different syntax. If you see, this percentage can be converted to this, and similarly, the 7 can be converted. I'm using a colon, so I want to use this. And here, instead of JavaScript colon, I will say JavaScript and then alert 1. Let's see if it works. Send message. Nothing happened. So let's go ahead and say it does not work. Very bad. But I want to keep trying. And that's where my brain says, let's keep trying. What was it? JavaScript. And then it was and this. And important thing to note here is that there is something called this, which is actually a legitimate keyword. So we can assume that the condition must expect exactly the JavaScript protocol, but in this case we are encoding it, so we can add this as a keyword here, which is a valid keyword in JavaScript. So I will say this semicolon alert 1 and then the tag close. Let me copy it. And if you say there is a test script which is created, similarly, I would say, oh, there are 3. That's the problem. I will say Vandana. And I will close it. And if I'll see, it works. Test script. Now, if you see, it might not be working, but then it's trying to do something at the back end, right? And that's where the point is, that you need to keep trying. That as soon as I see an input box, the first thing I want to do is I want to exploit it. I want to understand what can go wrong with this. Maybe Vandana is not working. Let's try document dot location, which might give me some location, and see if it works. Maybe the pop-up is getting blocked, but here the application is actually working. Let me go ahead and refresh and try again and see if it works. Okay, main room, start chatting. Okay, and let's see. But you can keep trying. It should work. And here there are multiple things can be done. Or let me go ahead and try something else and say just the alert JavaScript and $58 this alert document.location. If you see, it's not happening, but there's something which is happening. There could be a cross-site scripting. There is some sanitization which is not happening. Now let me show you the code. Here, this is the code for my app. So this is a chat app, which is multi-tier architecture. Here I have front end, which is running Vue, and then I also have a backend, which is running using Java. So I can try and figure out what issues can be there here. I can understand if there is a sanitization which is happening or not. And so here I'm using Sneak, which is an open source thing, but you can use dependency check. We can search for certain tools which are there, which are part of OWASP. Let me see extension. I don't know why my system is behaving a little weird. No, I don't want to run Inion. Sorry. I'll try Sneak. Okay, the system itself is a little slow here. Okay. So if you see, I can see snake. Similarly, there try here, and I can figure out the vulnerable code. It starts behaving weird. Let me close my browser. Now I can scan the vulnerabilities and I can figure out if there are any issues, because I need to know code installation appears to be corrupt. I don't want to do anything right now. So this is what happens. Sometimes demigods don't shower their blessings. Okay, thank you. Here, I can see that it's running the vulnerability scan and it's trying to figure out the issues in code scan. But here I can see that there are multiple vulnerabilities which are here, and I can see which ones are which. For example, there is a server-side request forgery. There is a vulnerability related to denial of service. And I can see there are marked issues which are there. Let me go ahead and run sneak test and see what vulnerabilities can be there. So I can use command line as well to run scans. Here I have dual license issue, denial of service, and many other issues which are here. Now, if you want to understand more, so for example, I want to go ahead and run this on all projects. So I can run it on all projects and figure out what can be there. Now, this is a free version that I'm using. That's why I'm showcasing. If it's a commercial version, I would not show in any open platform so that you cannot use. Here, I'm very particular that when I use anything for open source community like Women in Code, I use only the open source components. So I can use Sneak, I can use dependency check and many other tools. Here I can see different vulnerabilities, and you can take a look at it, what kind of vulnerabilities it is. Now, cross-site scripting was one vulnerability which was highlighted because it was an input field and there was something which was happening. And here I can see server-side request forgery that needs to be fixed, many vulnerabilities that are there. Now, coming back to here, uh, any questions before I move ahead?
I think we are good.
Okay, good. All right, let me go ahead and let me share my screen again and share some of the resources which can be helpful for them. Okay. Here, what we really need is when we talk about developer security, we need to understand why it matters. What are the building blocks behind the DevSecOps culture, and why do we need these practices and streamlining DevSecOps? Now, developer security matters because there's a issue in tooling process, and there's a trust issue between development and security. There are so many tools which are there. There are releases which are happening within 15 days, within 10 days, within a week, within days. Earlier, when I started my career in application security and I was working with developers or being a developer in the beginning, the releases used to happen after 6 months or 1 year. That was a big time. And then we used to go for party, but now that's not the thing. And there is no clear ownership right now. Everyone who says that we need to have DevSecOps, but then who will own it? Nobody knows about it. It's always a blurry line. And that's why we need to understand who has more time. Can we say developer has time? No, they're trying to build the application which is perfect or looking good as per the requirement. But then what happens is they barely have time for security. And that's where this real world security education is needed, where we understand how we can build the security culture, where we be empathetic, where we understand what leadership is trying to say. So leadership stays very clear: these tools can be given, these tools cannot be given, and prioritize what is really needed. And that's where collaboration matters, where developers say these are the tools which are very important, which can help us in reducing the bugs, which can help us in reducing the efforts, and at the same time, which can help us in making sure that the development process is secure. And the most important is we should reward them if they are getting involved in these activities. Who doesn't love rewards, right? And This actually helps when we have certain programs which are developer focused, where executive says that, yes, you have a buy-in, go ahead and run these projects. And we have clear guardrail. These are the things that team only will do and nothing else. And for that, we need to have right coaching and mentoring. And my favorite part, where we recognize the people for finding the bugs and fixing the bugs. Very important. And that's where we empower our developers with best practices, where there are so many process changing decisions which are there, which can actually help them make the right decision. And there has to be clear visibility. There has to be proper focus on rollout. Now, you can use automation. Now, all of this is okay, but then we need to streamline. All of this is gone. Let me tell you. We talk about developer tooling. We talk about overwhelming developer that we don't need to automate everything. Everybody knows it. But what can we do? How you can find your edge? So, I will share some resources with you. Let me stop sharing and let me ping you in your channel, or I would say in the chat box. There are certain videos that we have created and I've created with some people, which might be of some help for you if you want to get into application security, if you want to get into network security, or per se you want to be part of security. And because DevSecOps is just one portion of, and when I say DevSecOps, I can go on and on for DevSecOps for months, literally months. It is so huge. But then I need to understand what is really needed. So you can build your career using different aspects, network security, application security. So let me, where is it? Okay. Here, there is a small YouTube series which says breaking into AppSec or breaking into cybersecurity, cloud security, being a consultant, being into web pen testing, being into offensive security, red teaming, how you can pivot your career from being a developer to cybersecurity, whatnot. So I did it with some people, and even there is a friend of mine who runs a big newsletter, Clint Gibber. With him, I did a amazing session, which went on for half an hour, longest session, which is about DevSecOps, how you can actually get into DevSecOps. So breaking into DevSecOps is very, very important. So these are the small learning things that I have created so that you can go back and learn from these resources and you can understand what the space has to offer it to you. And what else do we have? There is a small talk that I created, which is around web app pen testing. Let me share this as well here. Now, this session was to not give you everything about DevSecOps, but to give you some resources where you can go back and do it. And if you have any questions at any given point of time, you can come back to me and you can ask me those questions, because these sessions are just 1 hour sessions, 45-minute sessions. And if you don't ask questions, trust me, they will never be answered. It took me years to build these resources and understand DevSecOps, and I would say I still don't understand fully. There's too much to it. So you can go through these resources, and now we have 9 minutes. If there is any questions, I'm opening up the stage.
I have filled in some questions which I think will be suitable for the audience, right? So one is like, so we have folks who have been working on DevOps, let's say, for example. I know a couple of folks who are like working on DevOps. Is it easier for them to transition into DevSecOps sector? Have you seen that happening? Is that normal?
Oh, absolutely. That is normal. I was once working for Accenture, like that was way back in 2014, 13, 14. And that time I was supposed to build a team of people. Any person I hired, at the last minute, they would say, I wouldn't be able to join. Now, remember, security people are very less and there are many jobs. So it was a big problem. And that happened a couple of times. And I was like, no, chuck it. I'm going to hire the team from within. And then I hired some developers, I hired some testers and project managers. The interesting bit came is that my team was most strongest because they knew the environment so well that they had to add just the flavor of security, understand the tooling and the right kind of inputs from me. And that's it. They were the best team that I've ever had. So if you are in DevOps, you know the environment well. You just need to make sure you code securely. That's it. The input validation, where you are checking it properly, and at the same time escaping the characters. There are some basic things. If you're doing it right, trust me, you're the best security team.
Yeah.
And developers and testers can be the best of security people.
That's great. That's good to know. And personally, I had one question, as in like even I have worked on a bit on DevOps as well as vulnerability
Yes.
management, right? So you have a lot of tools in DevSecOps, right? And for each functionality, you have different tools. Do you recommend any sort of like a platform where all these vulnerabilities can be like linked into one platform for a, what do you say, consolidated platform, which I have heard a few like Defect Dojo, such kind of open source platforms. Are you aware of any such platforms where you can have like a single pane of glass and see all the vulnerabilities in your experience? By
Um,
nature?
I think Defect Dojo is Defect Dojo is from OWASP, so I'm aware about that. That Matt Tesoro has written it. But I would say that is the platform just to see the vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Like Defect Dojo, I totally love. Like you can have vulnerabilities from all the tools, from Jira to everyone, everywhere.
Right.
Even from Qualys, I can actually import the vulnerabilities in Defect Dojo, and I can see a beautiful dashboard. But then I would say there is not one bullet which can actually hit everything. Let's put it
That.
this way.
But do you oversee a future wherein
But we
like
need to
because
understand what do we need for what.
right, that's true. But as I see that usually the vendors, right, from the product side, they're all going towards a single platform. So do you see or foresee a future where even the
Hmm.
DevSecOps can go to a place where the consolidation of results can happen at one place? And do you think that would be a better option in future?
Oh, absolutely. That would be a better option. That would be like the best option because um, if we say everything goes to Jira, correct? Even
Right.
the results from all these software composition analysis to source code to DAST, like which is dynamic application security testing, if they go to Jira or Remedy or one tool where developers understand, trust me, that is like the best day because it will be easy for them to manage it. Now it's all
Agreed.
scattered, so I totally agree. That'll be the best thing that can happen.
Agreed, agreed. And do you think coming onto the similar lines right now with the impact of the generative AI or the AI, is are you seeing any sort of an impact in the DevSecOps sector? Because I believe it's most into automation side, right? I'm sure this is a most frequently asked question for you these days.
Um, okay, I would just say that mm, with great power comes great responsibility. Like AI is amazing. Sneak also has an AI component because we have onboarded a company which has an AI, and then I'm working on certain tools with OWASP, which has LLM. But interesting bit to remember is that there's one attack which happened in one of the India's biggest company around telecom because there was a developer who actually to pick up the code from ChatGPT and made it as part of the production pipeline. I wouldn't name the company, but that's a big telecom company, and that was a big problem. So it is good. It can guide us, it can
Yeah.
help us, but it's not a foolproof plan. Correct? Because it will take ages. It'll take some time for it to get trained, and uh, it we will get there for sure. It will only
I
help
think it
us.
can be
Like
utilized more
right now,
for
people
even
are writing
for
blogs using.
yes, I think the documentation, right? The reporting, I think we can definitely use it for making it easier for the CISOs to understand. I mean, to the management to understand that this is what we have got a vulnerability picture. I think that can be useful there in that aspect.
Right. Correct. Correct. I agree. I agree. And there is a question: any SecOps tools support AI? I think if I say now there are more tools coming up. Every organization is experimenting with AI. IBM has done it like way long back with Watson, and many hospitals are using Watson. But when it comes to SecOps tool, I wouldn't be able to name it right now. But if you give it 6 months, then yes, absolutely, a lot of SecOps tools would be using AI or at least some model in some way for sure. But not at the
Absolutely.
moment.
And
I
I
wouldn't
think
name
most of
any of it.
the, I think these days we have this CNAP kind of platform, right? And even in the DevSecOps, you be it like Zscaler, be it Palo Alto, I think everyone's coming with their own AI module. It's just a plug and play kind of a thing these days with the open
Yeah,
AI.
that's right.
So, and of course,
Correct.
there's
Yeah,
buzzwords
yeah.
as well. So, don't completely rely on
It's a
that though.
buzzword. Correct.
Hopefully, we should be able to see more adaptions. I think it's going to make life easier
Hmm.
as well. So, And on a final note,
Right.
like as this is for Women Who Code, right? And you've been a leader for so long, like you've been inspiring more and more women. What is one message you would like to give for folks who wants to get into this sector? And what do you think? Like, what is your final parting thoughts?
I would say never shy away in asking questions. In the beginning, I used to be so shy that for first 5 years, I was just working for one company, and I was very, very nervous in asking questions. Like the first 5 completely. But when I came to Bangalore and I started getting involved with community, I started asking questions. But I realized that till the time you don't ask questions, you will never have answers. And especially cyber security, people used to call that there are very few women. You would be seen as a stupid, but no, trust me, that's not the case. The same thing applies to anyone and everyone. Everyone thinks the same thing. Now I have a lot of men friends and other friends, and I trust me, everyone thinks the same. That what if who thinks, right? So everyone has the same question, so never shy away in asking your questions. What I do is I keep writing it to people, like on LinkedIn. A lot of times they answer. Now they answer for sure, but now like it's over the years. And sometimes I used to post questions on my LinkedIn, and there were people who wanted to answer. There were leaders who wanted to answer, and they used to DM me. That was one beautiful thing, and they were still in touch. They're still in touch with me because they answered my questions. Till the time you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I think everyone is on the same page. There's no dumb question. Ask questions. That's what I believe.
Absolutely, and one person can't do everything, so you need support. So of course, it's a team game, cybersecurity, if I'm not wrong. So I'm very sure.
Yeah, yeah. There are few things which I would know. There are few things you would be champion of, which I would not know, and I would love to learn from you. So it's about like it's a learning game, and it's a never-ending process. So if you think there's something which you don't know, ask. That's where it starts.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Vandana. I'm sure next time when you're in Singapore, there'll be a lot of more folks who will be reaching out to you here, possibly for Black Hat or RSA. Well, it's a pleasure having you today. It's really glad that the very detailed workshop, wonderful one, and hope to see more of such workshops. And once again, I'd like to say thank you from Women of Code Singapore. It was a pleasure having you, and wish
Thank you so
you
much.
see you then. All right, guys. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.